Walk into a motorcycle dealership in 1998 and you'd find dozens of screaming two-stroke machines. 10 years later, they'd vanished. An entire engine technology, proven in racing, beloved by riders, and still profitable, disappeared from showrooms worldwide in less than a decade. This is the story of the two-stroke motorcycle engine, how it dominated racing for 3 decades, why it suddenly disappeared, and what's happening right now that might bring it back. The official explanation? Emissions regulations and evolving market preferences. But when you examine the timeline, the racing rule changes, and the business decisions, a more complex picture emerges. Today, we're investigating the complete story, backed by race results, regulatory documents, and market data. Chapter 1. The Golden Age. The 1960s. While the motorcycle establishment perfected 4-stroke engines, complex, heavy, expensive, a simpler technology was changing everything. The 2-stroke engine produced power every single time the piston completed a cycle. Not every other cycle like a 4-stroke, every cycle. This created power-to-weight ratios that 4-strokes couldn't match. A 125 cubic centimeter 2-stroke could outrun a 250 cubic centimeter 4-stroke. A 500 cubic centimeter 2-stroke delivered extraordinary power from an engine with half the parts of an equivalent 4-stroke. Take the Honda CR 500. Arguably the most feared dirt bike ever built. The early models from 1984 to 1992 produced approximately 60 to 64 horsepower from 491 cubic centimeters. Later versions, from 1993 to 2001, were gradually detuned to around 56 horsepower, but even at that lower output, the bike remained a legend. But raw power was just the beginning. A 2-stroke had roughly half the parts of a 4-stroke. No valves, no camshafts, no timing chains. A motivated teenager with a service manual could perform a complete top-end rebuild in an afternoon with basic hand tools. This simplicity made 2-strokes accessible. A family could afford to race. Privateers could compete against factory teams. In Grand Prix motorcycle racing, the transition was dramatic. Until the mid-1970s, 4-strokes dominated the premier 500cc class. MV Agusta's 4-cylinder machines, ridden by legends like Giacomo Agostini, ruled the sport. Then, Yamaha brought purpose-built 2-stroke race bikes to the World Championship. In 1975, Agostini himself, having switched from MV Agusta to Yamaha, won the 500 LEC's World Championship on a 2-stroke. This marked the first time a 2-stroke machine had won the premier class. From 1975 to 2001, 27 consecutive years, every single 500cc Grand Prix world champion rode a 2-stroke. Barry Sheene, Kenny Roberts, Eddie Lawson, Wayne Rainey, Mick Doohan, even Valentino Rossi's first 500cc title in 2001 came on a 2-stroke Honda NSR 500. In motocross, the dominance was even more absolute. From the mid-1970s through 2004, 2-strokes won virtually every major championship. Roger DeCoster, Bob Hanna, Jeremy McGrath, early Ricky Carmichael, all 2-strokes. Why? In motocross, power-to-weight ratio determines how fast you accelerate out of corners, and nothing matched a 2-stroke's explosive acceleration. The 4-stroke wasn't just slower, it was considered obsolete. But technology and racing are always evolving. And by the late 1990s, multiple forces were converging that would change everything. Chapter 2. The Engineering. Understanding what happened next requires understanding how these engines work. In a 4-stroke, you need 4 piston movements to complete one power cycle. Intake, compression, power, exhaust. That's 3 strokes of preparation for every power stroke. A 2-stroke combines these functions. As the piston moves up, it compresses the fuel-air mixture while simultaneously drawing a fresh charge into the crankcase. When ignition occurs, the piston slams down, pushing out exhaust gases while transferring that fresh charge into the combustion chamber through carefully designed ports. 2 movements, 1 complete power cycle. Power every revolution instead of every other revolution. The real genius of racing 2-strokes was the expansion chamber exhaust, a carefully tuned pipe that created reflected pressure waves. These waves pushed unburned fuel mixture back into the cylinder before the exhaust port closed, effectively supercharging the engine. This could increase power by 30% or more. This created the legendary power band. At 7,000 RPM, you'd have reasonable power. At 8,500 RPM, when the expansion chamber waves synchronized perfectly, power would surge dramatically. Riders called it hitting the pipe or coming on the pipe. Pro riders learned to live in this narrow, explosive zone, feathering the clutch, keeping revs high. It wasn't just riding, it was an art form. But here's what made two-strokes special to everyday riders. You could maintain them yourself. Top-end rebuild on a 1995 Yamaha RD350, 4 hours, approximately $180 in parts. In 1990s dollars, basic hand tools. Compare that to a modern 4-stroke, longer service time, significantly more expensive parts, specialized tools, valve clearance specifications, and less room for error. This meant working-class families could afford to race. High schoolers could maintain their own bikes. The two-stroke was genuinely democratic technology. Chapter 3. The Regulatory Pressure. December 31st, 1970. President Nixon signs the Clean Air Act into law. For the first time, emissions become a federal priority in the United States. And two-strokes had a fundamental problem. Because two-strokes use their crankcase as a pump, some fuel mixture escapes unburned during the exhaust phase. In carbureted two-strokes, this short-circuiting meant approximately 20 to 30% of the fuel went straight out the exhaust pipe, according to EPA testing data. This resulted in hydrocarbon emissions 2 to 4 times higher than comparable 4-strokes. They also burned two-stroke oil mixed with gasoline, creating that iconic blue smoke. Romantic? Absolutely. Clean? Not even close. But the 1970 Clean Air Act initially focused on automobiles. Motorcycle emissions regulations didn't seriously ramp up until the 1990s. Two-strokes had 2 decades to evolve. 1991, California, CARB introduces stricter off-road engine standards. 1997, EPA tightens regulations on small engines. 1999, European Union introduces Euro 1 motorcycle emission standards. 2000, EPA Phase 2 standards for motorcycles announced. Manufacturers faced a decision: invest billions in cleaning up two-stroke technology or pivot to 4-strokes they'd been developing for decades. The business case for 4-strokes seemed clear. They were more complex, required more frequent dealer service, and generated higher profit margins over the ownership lifecycle. But here's what makes the story more complicated. The technology to clean up two-strokes already existed. In 1997, Bimota released the V-Do, the world's first direct-injection two-stroke street bike. Instead of pre-mixing fuel with intake air, it injected fuel directly into the combustion chamber after the exhaust port closed. The result? Hydrocarbon emissions reduced by up to 70% compared to carbureted two-strokes. Orbital Engine Company in Australia developed similar technology. Aprilia experimented with it. Mercury Marine successfully implemented it in outboard engines, where it became the industry standard. The V-Do itself was a commercial disaster. Bimota's execution was flawed, the fuel injection system was unreliable, and the company nearly went bankrupt. But the core technology worked. The question is, why didn't Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, or Suzuki, companies with massive R&D budgets and proven engineering talent, perfect this technology? They certainly had the resources. They had successfully implemented fuel injection on 4 strokes. The answer may lie in what happened next in racing. Chapter 4. The Rule Changes. While emissions regulations provided pressure, the decisive blow came from racing rulebooks. Because in motorsports, what wins on Sunday sells on Monday, and what's banned on Sunday doesn't sell at all. In 1998, the AMA, American Motorcyclist Association, introduced what they called the 4-stroke exemption rule for motocross. The rule was specific. 450 cubic centimeters 4-strokes could compete directly against 250 cubic centimeters 2-strokes in the same class, and 250 cubic centimeters 4-strokes could race against 125 cubic centimeters 2-strokes, an 80% displacement advantage for 4-strokes. The justification? 4-strokes only produce power every other revolution, so they need more displacement to be competitive. But the math doesn't quite work. A 450 cubic centimeter 4-stroke produces similar or greater peak horsepower than a 250 cubic centimeter 2-stroke with substantially more torque across the rev range. The only advantage the 2-stroke retained was weight, and that gap was closing rapidly with aluminum frame technology. The effect was immediate. 1998. 2-strokes still dominate, 4-strokes are suddenly competitive. 2000, Doug Henry wins the first AMA Supercross race on a 4-stroke Yamaha YZ400F. 2002, Ricky Carmichael, the greatest motocross racer ever, switches to a 4-stroke Honda CRF 450R. 2004, the last 2-stroke championship in Premier Class AMA, Supercross/Motocross. Once Carmichael switched, factory teams followed. Privateers had no choice but to follow the factories. Development dollars shifted entirely to 4 strokes. MotoGP racing followed a parallel path. In 2002, the FIM introduced rules allowing 990 cubic centimeter 4-stroke engines alongside 500 cubic centimeter 2-strokes in the Premier class, nearly double the displacement. By 2002, Valentino Rossi had switched to Honda's RC211V 4-stroke. In 2003, he won the championship. The 2-stroke era in Grand Prix racing was over after 54 years of dominance. The 2-stroke hadn't been beaten on equal terms. The playing field had been fundamentally altered. Chapter 5: The Systematic Phase Out. What happened next in production bike lineups is striking in its coordination, though whether this coordination was planned or simply market forces aligning remains debatable. 2001, Honda discontinues the CR500R. 2004, Kawasaki ends production of the KX500. 2007, Kawasaki discontinues the KX250 2-stroke. 2008, Suzuki stops making the RM250. 2009, Honda drops the CR250R. By 2010, you couldn't buy a new full-size 2-stroke motocross bike from any major Japanese manufacturer in the United States. 3 decades of dominance, gone in less than 10 years. The messaging was remarkably consistent across all 4 manufacturers, responding to customer demand for 4-stroke technology. 4-stroke advancements make them the preferred choice. Committed to environmental responsibility. Market trends indicate preference for linear power delivery. And there's truth here. Many riders, particularly older recreational riders and beginners, did prefer the smoother, more predictable power delivery of 4 strokes. They appreciated better low-end torque for trail riding. Later models offered electric starting. The broader, more manageable power band was easier for less experienced riders. But this wasn't the universal sentiment the manufacturers claimed. From a business standpoint, the maintenance patterns differ significantly between the 2 technologies. 2-strokes require more frequent but simpler and cheaper service, typically top-end rebuilds that owners could perform themselves. 4-strokes need less frequent but more complex and expensive maintenance, including valve adjustments and more catastrophic failures requiring dealer service. Early 2000s industry analyses suggested that while the patterns differ, total ownership costs over several years were more comparable than the dramatic difference manufacturers implied. The key difference was where the money was spent. 2-stroke owners did more work themselves, while 4-stroke owners spent more at dealerships. For manufacturers and dealer networks, 4-strokes represented recurring service revenue. 2-strokes were largely a one-time sale with minimal dealer interaction. Did the major Japanese manufacturers coordinate the phase-out? There's no documented evidence of explicit collusion. No leaked memo says, let's eliminate 2-strokes together. But the circumstantial pattern is notable. Racing rule changes happened within 18 months across AMA and FIM. Production discontinuations occurred within a narrow 8-year window. All manufacturers shelved direct injection prototypes simultaneously. Messaging was nearly identical across competitors. One former engineer from a Japanese manufacturer told Dirt Rider magazine in an off-the-record interview that there was an unspoken understanding among manufacturers that 2-strokes would be phased out together. We cannot independently verify this claim. What we can verify is the outcome. A viable technology with known emission solutions was systematically removed from the market. But the story doesn't end there, because riders had something to say about it. Chapter 6: The Market Response. Around 2010, something unexpected happened. Used 2-stroke prices didn't drop, they climbed. A 1997 Honda CR500 that sold for $3,200 new? By 2015, clean examples were selling for $6,000. By 2020, $8,000 to $10,000. Today in 2025, pristine CR500s regularly command $12,000 to $15,000 depending on condition and location. Meanwhile, equivalent four-strokes from the same era depreciated normally. A 2005 CRF 450R worth $3,500 new might sell for $1,500 to $2,000 today. The market was speaking, just not the way manufacturers had claimed it would. Two-stroke specific racing events began appearing across the country. Two-stroke nationals, smoke show weekend. These weren't small club races. They were drawing thousands of spectators and hundreds of competitors. Events like the 2025 Wiseco Two-Stroke Championship attracted over 1,000 entries with more than 5,000 fans in attendance. Adults dragging 25-year-old bikes out of storage. Young riders discovering the machines their parents rode. YouTube channels dedicated to two-stroke restoration started pulling millions of views. Online forums saw explosive growth in two-stroke sections. The underground two-stroke community wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. While Japanese manufacturers abandoned two-strokes, smaller European companies made a calculated bet. What if we kept building them? KTM, Husqvarna, Beta, Sherco, TM Racing, Gas, they continued producing two-stroke motocross and enduro bikes. And they innovated. In 2018, KTM introduced transfer port injection, TPI, electronic fuel injection for two strokes that eliminated premixing oil and reduced emissions by approximately 70%. The system met Euro 4 emission standards. The result? KTM's two-stroke sales grew while four-stroke sales plateaued. In some European markets, their two-stroke models outsold four-stroke equivalents. The dying technology that Japanese manufacturers abandoned remained profitable, desirable, and viable in the hands of companies willing to develop it. Chapter 7: What We Lost and What's Coming. Beyond specifications and sales figures, something less quantifiable disappeared with two strokes. The smell of premix on a Saturday morning, the high-pitched scream that echoed through canyons, the explosive hit of the power band that demanded complete attention and rewarded skill with intoxicating acceleration. We lost simplicity, an engine straightforward enough that rebuilding it taught an entire generation how machines actually work. We lost accessibility, the family bike that didn't require professional service for routine maintenance. In exchange, we gained sophistication, electronic fuel injection, exhaust valve systems, engines that produce smooth, controllable power across the entire rev range. These are genuine improvements for many riders, especially those who prefer predictable power delivery and longer service intervals. But something was traded away. Now, in 2025, something interesting is happening. Yamaha has filed patents for advanced direct injection two-stroke systems. Honda's R&D division is developing hydrogen two-stroke prototypes. Suzuki has quietly resumed two-stroke development for specific markets. Why now? Because electric motorcycles have changed the equation. As electric motorcycles handle the zero emissions category, the pressure on combustion engines shifts. If electric bikes represent the clean future, does it matter whether internal combustion bikes are two-stroke or four-stroke? Some engineers now argue that two-strokes could be ideal range extenders for electric motorcycles. Lightweight, compact, simple, capable of running on alternative fuels. A small two-stroke generator maintaining battery charge could extend range by 200% while adding minimal weight. Running at constant optimal RPM, emissions become manageable. The same simplicity that made two-strokes perfect for racing might make them perfect for hybrid applications. So what really happened to two-stroke motorcycles? The evidence shows legitimate emissions concerns that could have been addressed with existing technology. Racing rule changes that gave four-strokes massive displacement advantages. Business incentives that favored machines generating more dealer service revenue. Regulatory pressure that provided political cover for market decisions. Genuine consumer preferences that favored four strokes for certain applications. Was it conspiracy? The evidence doesn't support coordinated collusion. Was it capitalism? Absolutely. Companies made rational business decisions that maximized profit. Was it fair? That depends on your perspective. What's certain is that two-stroke technology was removed from the market not because it couldn't work, but because multiple forces, regulatory, competitive, and financial, aligned against it at the same time. But here's what matters. As we record this in late 2025, two-stroke culture is stronger than ever. Values continue climbing. Events sell out. European manufacturers remain profitable building them. Patent filings suggest major manufacturers are reconsidering the technology. As long as there are riders who remember what it felt like to crack the throttle on a CR500 and feel that power band explode, as long as there are young riders discovering that a 1998 RD350 delivers a more engaging experience than many modern bikes, as long as there are mechanics who appreciate engines you can understand without specialized computers, the two-stroke will never truly die. The two-stroke story shows how regulations, racing politics, and business incentives shape the machines we ride. It's a reminder that market evolution is never just about technology. It's about the complex interaction between engineering, regulation, competition, and profit. What's your take? Was the phase-out inevitable evolution or avoidable loss? Drop your thoughts in the comments, especially if you're still riding a two-stroke in 2025. And if you want more deep dives into motorcycle history and industry decisions, subscribe. We've got more stories to tell.